Now, here in the UK, people granted asylum will only be allowed to stay in the country temporarily in a major change of policy to be announced by the Home Secretary on Monday. It's part of a shake-up of asylum rules. Under the new proposals, anyone granted asylum will have to return to their home country once it's safe to do so. The new policy is influenced by the centre-left government in Denmark, which has some of the toughest asylum rules in Europe. Well, Ian Watson has more.
Shabana Mahmood told the Labour conference in September she'd do whatever it takes to regain control of the UK's borders.
We can only be open to the world if we are able to determine who comes in and who must leave.
And she's been looking to another government run by Labour's sister party for inspiration. Denmark's Social Democrats have been toughening up their immigration policies to see off an electoral threat from the populist right. Last week, the BBC revealed that the Home Secretary sent top officials to Copenhagen to see what lessons could be learned, and we're about to see the results. In the UK, if you're successful in claiming asylum, you become a refugee. You can stay for 5 years initially and then apply, subject to conditions, to stay permanently. But now the Home Secretary is expected to announce, like Denmark, that refugees will only be allowed to stay on a temporary basis and must return when their home country is considered safe. The Home Office says this will be the biggest change to refugee policy since the war. This is how those who represent refugees reacted.
People who are fleeing for their lives from bombs and from tyranny and from persecutors don't sit and think, should I go to that country because this will happen to me or that will happen to me? They go there because they have family, they have connections, they can speak a bit of English or historical connections. That's why they come. And these measures will simply hurt them. They won't make any difference as to why they will come here in the first place.
The Home Secretary hopes the policy shift will dissuade some asylum seekers from crossing the Channel in the first place. Some in Labour's ranks don't want the government to go down the Danish road. They think the policies are too similar to the populist right. The Conservatives and Reform UK think the policy isn't bold enough. They say the government should leave the European Convention on Human Rights, which they say is a barrier to deportations. But the Home Secretary says she recognises there's a crisis at our borders, and the Danish way could help solve her huge political headache. Ian Watson, BBC News.
Well, our politics investigations correspondent Billy Kember is across this. So, Billy, we've heard from Ian how it potentially could look. The announcement expected on Monday. Why are the government doing this?
Well, successive governments have grappled with the issue of immigration and how to take control of Britain's borders and to bring down, crucially, the number of people travelling here to claim asylum and within that, the number of small boat crossings. The number of asylum applications is at a record high in the last year, and small boat crossings continue in large numbers. Last week, in 4 days alone, there were more than 2,000 people who arrived across the Channel on small boats. So it's a very hot political issue and has been for a number of years. And now Labour think they've potentially found some policy solutions by looking across the sea to Denmark.
And in terms of the political reaction to this, of course, the Conservatives reform, they want to strengthen these laws very much. But within the Labour Party, there is some opposition.
There is. There's pressure from the left of the Labour Party in opposition, really, to what's coming from the right, these sort of buffeting political forces that the government has to grapple with. Those on the left who say that this is an electoral dead end, that this isn't a moral decision to make, and that Labour risks shipping support to the Greens and to the Lib Dems on this issue. I think there are big questions too about whether this policy will work. Now, Labour will point to what's happened in Denmark, where asylum applications are at a 40-year low if you exclude the coronavirus pandemic, but the number of people who've actually been had their application accepted and then have had it subsequently overturned because where they've come from has then been deemed to be safe is quite low. It's in the low dozens for each year.
And do we understand, just briefly if you would, will this impact people who are applying now, or is it newcomers?
So this will, we await the details on Monday, but when it's brought in, it will impact anyone applying for asylum. It remains to be seen what happens to those who previously had asylum applications granted. But under these changes, someone being granted a successful asylum application would become a refugee, would then only hold that status on a temporary basis. It would be regularly reviewed, perhaps every 2 or 3 years, and then crucially, if their circumstances in their home country were deemed to have changed and it was now deemed to be safe, they could then be returned home at that stage.